So I'm really excited about this session. We've done some stuff around AI before, James, with yourself, but today we've got some different new perspectives on it as well. But this session specifically, we're going to be looking at basically what does successful AI look like? Because there's plenty of stats out there saying how many organisations are currently looking to use AI to enhance their operations, but a lot of the time people don't know exactly what the end product's going to be. So I think this session we're really just going to dive into basically what does successful AI look like. And James, I'm going to pick on you to start with. What would you say a successful AI implementation in the contact centre specifically looks like?
I think you probably need to reframe the question. So it's to understand what a successful AI implementation looks like is you need to know what you want the AI to do. What is the objective? What metric or metrics are we trying to change? And then understanding what levers or KPIs need to be pulled in order to get to that metric to change. And then you could potentially look at how effectively or efficiently that objective has been reached as a result of using the AI. But they might be individual AI use cases, individual implementations, or it could be a much larger project. But ultimately, if you can't articulate the outcome you want to achieve, then you will be able to measure the success and ultimately if it has been a successful implementation.
Yourself, Christina?
I think it's quite a nuanced question depending on what sort of business that you work in. So I work in a highly regulated environment. So for me, selecting the right use case is about taking a lower risk approach and starting to get ourselves comfortable with it, whether that's our technical resources, whether that's our frontline colleagues, having something that's going to provide us with benefit, absolutely. So it's going to have to feel safe, it's going to have to feel beneficial so that we can build confidence and we can build awareness of how it's going to work. And regulation around AI is, rapidly, or perhaps not so rapidly developing as fast as the technology is. But just being mindful of that and continually adapting our approach to how we're going to bring new use cases about as well.
All of the above, really. And it's not a single one. Hello, I'm a business, I'm going to introduce AI into my contact centre. It very much use case driven, I believe. There's obviously absolutely key to any deployment of AI into a business is establishing what the desired outcome is, and then how do you measure it? Is it successful? So let's say I'm introducing auto summary, for example, which is fundamentally powered by the summarization of a transcript by an LLM presented back to an agent. How do I measure what success looks like in that field? And there's a cold hard metric of after call work. Well, should theoretically reduce in time because an agent's not having to write the note. But deployment tells us that actually after call work will increase. So if you use that as a cold hard metric in the short term, you're going to say, well, that's failed because after call work's gone up. Do you know why? Yeah, because the agents are reviewing the note. Because it's new and they don't trust it. So they want to see what's going on. So they're taking longer because they care.
Yeah.
So actually it's putting in considered success stages of deployment of AI. And then also you need to make sure that it's being used. If I introduce a thing into a contact centre, whether that be front office agent support or back office analysts support, for example, if they're not using it, and I can't see that it's being used, and I can't measure that it's being used, then the project's failed right at the get-go because nothing has particularly changed.
Yeah.
So key to successful deployment is transparency. Make sure the key stakeholders within any particular project are engaged. They know what's going on. They know why it's going on. And then you have the feedback loops in place to be able to gather their active and measure their participation to make sure that it is having the desired impact and then do something with that information.
Yeah.
So
that's where I think it's so important to build trust.
Trust.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And confidence. Yeah.
Sounds like the measurements a massive key in measuring if it's been successful or not. And we spoke earlier about vulnerability as well, which that's quite a hard thing to put a measure on. So you need to be really clear at the outset exactly what you're trying to achieve and the measures you're going to put on it to see if you've actually achieved it. I think the next question is, how do you know if, from a contact centre perspective again, if you're actually ready for AI in the first place, or you need to do a lot more work to get to the stage to realise the value from it? Andrew, there might be one for you.
I'm going to go back to a previous point very quickly because we say measure. So how do I measure it's successful? So what AI does do is introduce new data points and data sources for you to look at, which may not necessarily sit under a very traditional metric-driven success criteria. So let's look at auto summary. We'll ground that in again. If I've produced an auto summary and the agents are reviewing it, actually what I want to be able to do is review how many of the agents are reviewing it and if they're making changes. That introduces a whole new set of metrics to look at.
Yeah.
So are the teams that are measuring success ready for the new success measurements? And it's not... What's interesting, key to successful deployment is tapping in and being transparent about the known unknowns and the known knowns. Right, so we know, that measuring how many agents are making amendments to the auto summary is a really important piece of information to be able to make transparent to a business. If that information is available, showing that business where it is, so that you've got something that you can track. So it's all about the transparency and then giving the tools that allow you to measure that success and being able to harness that to make it work. And how do I know if a business is ready for it? Actually, operations might be. They'll say, oh, we're ready to go. But then you've got your risk and compliance department that's saying, no way, I'm not there yet. And that's something that is down to the business strategically to align internally processes to make sure that the various milestones are met so that AI can be deployed. Because it can be a really scary thing, especially in a regulated business like MoneyPlus.
Yeah. I agree. I think there are some clear indicators that a business isn't ready. So if data's not in good shape, we don't have good policies and procedures already. Those would be some early indicators or warning signs for me that we're not at the right starting point for that journey. What I think is really important is clear executive sponsorship. So, is this moving us towards our strategic ambitions? Does this support our ability to be able to deliver good outcomes for customers? Are we able to better evidence the outcomes that we're giving for customers? So making sure that's clear from every, in every layer of the organisation. And then I think it's the willingness to collaborate across those different functions to get people comfortable. We are going to do this. How do we do it in a way that different stakeholders can get comfortable? How do we have to adapt our approach to it so that certain, risk and compliance is the obvious one. I firmly believe that our compliance director would fully be in support of this, but she would have some buts. She would say, but we need to do this, this way, and having respect for everybody's input, because that's how you're going to do it in a safe way, or the safest possible way.
Do you find, off the back of that, so let's just say all of the gates and the various internal approvals are met, so the landscape is clear. You have a clear pathway to success and strategy is defined. What consideration are you giving to, well, I've got this future tech now, which is going to require a new set of skills.
Yeah.
How are you addressing either the identification of that skill set internally to be able to help develop the people to support this? What's your view on that?
I think there's more than one answer to that. So, first of all, we've recently put in place a product owner structure. So we have 2 product owners that look after our 2 core commercial products, and they're you know, that we're determined that they are going to be, and they are determined to be, passionate about everything that happens to a customer from start to finish. So that skill in itself, being able to look at the end-to-end customer journey, look at all of the pain points, scan all of the different data that we have available to us to see, you know, are we seeing friction in a part of the journey? Are we actually delivering poor outcomes to certain cohorts of customers? Having that skill set up front, I think, is really important, because that is a critical voice within any design decisions that we make. From a technology perspective, I think there's a balance. MoneyPlus aren't a huge organisation. You know, we're not a retail bank. We have a relatively finite number of resources, and we have to make sure that we have the best possible resources upskilled to the best possible level. And then we rely on companies like FourNet to bring in specialism and expertise. So we're not trying to build out a huge AI function, but what we are trying to do is leverage the best skills that we can find in the market, and then complement that with making sure we're informed enough to have the right oversight and not to have an over-reliance. And to be honest, what we've had so far is like a supported, guided journey that is educating us every step of the way. And then I think the other point is we've got existing people within our business that already deliver a huge amount of value to customers. We have to enhance their skills to be able to exist in this new context. So upskilling you know, it could be frontline colleagues, it could be our marketing team, it could be our finance team. We need to give them, we're going to give them new tools, we need to give them the capability to be able to use those tools effectively. So there's so much learning to be done. I don't think that's ever going to stop. I mean, it's never stopped anyway, it's just more accelerated in the context of AI. Yeah.
I think there's some interesting points of some organisations automating for automation's sake, but I know James has some work been done in the CX team where basically organisations come to us and say they want to automate a specific area, but when you actually drill down into it, there really won't be the value from it, and it could actually be detrimental sometimes, because that might be a really key channel for them. So it's also doing that work to pinpoint the areas that are actually going to have benefit for their specific customer journeys, like you say.
Yeah, I think there's a number of things that we will look at first before entering into an AI project, and be understanding what are you trying to achieve, obviously. Does that need to be achieved through AI or through technology, full stop? Is this a planning exercise where we can pull some other levers to kind of say, actually, you're slightly inefficient, we think you can be more efficient with the resources that you've got, which would actually help you hit this target here, and therefore you'd achieve the savings kind of more organically that way. Then we're looking at, you know, what are you automating for automating's sake? Are you potentially going to automate away some revenue streams? So any conversation that needs to happen where there's a potential upsell or cross-sell opportunity, you don't want to necessarily automate that away either. You want to keep that. So being able to identify that. And then more broadly, from a deployment point of view, we would all start with kind of data and process. So what data have you got? Is it quality? Are there any gaps? Can we access that data, or how do we access that data? Procedure-wise, have you got all your processes? Are they robust? Do they work today? What are the gaps? Do the processes that you have mapped, are they actually being followed by the humans in the business today? Because that's not always the same. And then understanding the processes that are there or that you're currently following, are they fit for purpose for an AI? So an AI is not restricted by sequence, and obviously you can do things concurrently. So it may be appropriate to re-engineer some of those processes specifically for the AI to be able to follow better. Or do you give the AI carte blanche to kind of say, here's the tools, here's the objective, off you go, if you're brave enough?
Not quite brave.
I think as well, that kind of brings it on nicely then in terms of, Christina, you mentioned you work with FourNet and NICE as well, around selecting the right tool and partner to actually then implement that and make sure it is successful.
Yeah.
What was like the thought process and the discovery process of actually finding the right partner and technology provider?
Yeah, it wasn't an easy one, because we did look at lots of different technologies in particular, but a few different implementation partners as well. So I think first of all we were looking for a proven track record that the partners that we were going to work with understood our industry and our regulatory context. And I think that both FourNet and Nice CX1 were able to demonstrate that. Also a willingness to work collaboratively, especially with the implementation partner. I was very keen to make sure that we had a group of people that were going to feel like an extension of our team. So that was important as well. And then, you know, obviously we look to customer testimonials. I think it's top of the Gartner quadrant now. Are you?
10 years in a row.
10 years in a row. So obviously there's data points there that you can look to make sure that the technology is the right one. But equally, we did look out to say what other businesses are using this technology and what do they say about it as well.
Yeah, because it's almost uncharted waters in some areas. So you definitely want to make sure you got the partner there to guide you as well through this process.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not trying to be a technology business. We're not trying to be specialists in everything. We're trying to be absolute specialists in looking after customers in financial difficulties, not specialists in AI. So finding someone that can really help us, that's critical. Yeah.
And have you found, because going on a transformative journey supported by technology is it is exciting, but it can be quite scary.
Yeah.
Have you found that you clearly set milestones and a phased approach to deployment? So we're going to go with voice, and then we're going to roll something out next, and that phased approach, has that been something that you're adopting, or has been a desire from day one, as in you're not trying to eat the whole pie in one go?
No, absolutely not. We wanted to identify first a use case that was going to be highly visible in the business, because we want people to see it and we want people to experience it. That's going to provide us with benefit, but that isn't too high risk. So we're not going to deploy it at something that's making a decision from day one. What we chose was call summarisation. So we're using the co-pilot within the NICE technology. We're going to be summarising calls, and great points that you made earlier about measuring how many times an agent is going in there and making an adjustment. I know I can say with 100% certainty that our advisors care so much about the customers and making sure that the next person who speaks to that customer is aware of things like vulnerability and their experience so far, that there will be a tendency to do that. I'm fine with that. That's a building block. You'll do that until you gain confidence. And I think you know, we might have our eye on a few other opportunities to use AI in different use cases that we'll deploy in the future. But I do think we'll take a kind of cautious approach to it and make sure that A, our people are comfortable, and B, our customers are comfortable. And we'll make sure that we continually get feedback from both of those groups. And importantly, our regulator, we recently launched a digital journey, and we've been in discussion with the regulator at all times about this is what we want to do, this is how it's looking, what do you think? You know, asking for feedback and having their input is really important. So I think that transparency as well for our compliance function will be an important measure of, are we ready to take the next step?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think it's important to stress from our experience and having gone on the journey many times with many customers through various different industries, some more highly regulated than others. Auto summary is a really good way just to test and learn the response of the business, to see how you can maximize that tool to provide the best outcome for your clients and supporting your agents. And on that note, for example, within the Copilot Auto Summary suite, you have a choice of LLMs that you can use. I mean, and some LLMs are better at doing certain things than others.
Yeah.
They are. And you might find when you begin the journey that you've created a prompt, you've said, right, I want to extract this information from the transcript, and the initial feedback from the agents is, actually, it's not really hitting the mark. You know, We find that sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, that doesn't mean you're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's like, oh, okay. Well, which LLM are you using? And then it could be just a simple matter of switching to a different version of LLM, which is available to you within the solution, because that one's better at doing a certain type of summary. And it's being aware of the fact that there are those potential gotchas. It's like, oh no, summary's not very good. Well, maybe you're asking too much of a technical nature from an LLM that doesn't provide a very good technical response.
Yeah.
In which case, let's flip it to that one. Go from Nova Lite to Nova Pro, or go from Nova Pro to Claude. And you can often see massive gains from just being really transparent about what doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because it is a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
You speak about the journey as well, so it's obviously, if you're leading it from a kind of transformation perspective, obviously the agents are the people going to be using this on the ground. How do you make sure that you've got buy-in and you've got the rest of the team on board throughout each stage to make sure that, like you say, if they are using it and it's not working 100%, they don't just give up on it straight away? What's the best way of basically making sure everyone's invested and everyone's using the technology to the best they can?
So I'll take that
All
one
eyes
to
on you.
start with.
Yeah.
Right. So one thing I can tell you is that none of our advisors jump out of bed in the morning, come to work to do their admin. They are very much coming to work because they like speaking to customers, they like helping customers, and they want to give the best possible value. So I think first identifying things that take away the burden from an advisor and free them up to do the things that they do enjoy doing and they do come to work to do. I think that one's critical. And then the second part of it, and I have had direct experience of this, the second part of it is that I'm not going to be able to define how this works. They are going to be able to define how this works, and they will be able to inform if it's a technology partner, way better than I can about how the process unfolds when you're dealing with a customer and the nuances in the process and all of the different things we need to think about. So allowing them to design it, to give an ambition that we want to reduce the amount of time you're spending doing admin, tell us what admin we can take away and tell us how to do it. It'd be just so important for buy-in. And then continually, on an ongoing basis, listening and listening again and getting that feedback from our frontline teams is really important.
No one's going to complain about having more time between calls, are they really?
Well, they might not have so much more time between calls. They'll be on to speaking to another customer, I'm sure. But that's why they've signed up. That's why they're there. They want they want to speak to customers. That's what they feel good about. Yeah.
Are you setting clearly defined timeframes around success? So let's just take the auto summary piece again. Not that it's just a really useful example.
Yeah.
Like, so from the time you switched it on, have you set yourself a business goal to say, actually, we want to see X in a decrease in after-call work by end of month 4? For example, have you set limits that are measurable in that respect?
I wouldn't say we've set them yet, but we will.
Yeah.
Because, come back to the consumer duty, and one of the outcomes that we need to be cognizant of is delivering fair value. Now, we can't deliver fair value if we continually increase our operating costs. So we have to use technology to find efficiencies and deliver benefit for our shareholders, but also for our customers, so that we can keep pricing fair and we can continue to demonstrate that we're doing the right things for customers. So it would be silly of me to sit here and say, no, we've a never-ending journey here and it doesn't matter how long it takes. We will set timeframes, but I think this first use case is critical to understanding what those timeframes look like. And working with you guys to understand what does that look like in other organisations and get some sensible data points around that, because before you and I spoke today, it not really occurred to me that we would be able to have data that says how many times is an advisor going in and look, at changing something. that's going to be really powerful. And actually that probably crunches the timeline a little bit, because when you give that information back, when you give that insight back to the frontline teams, and you say, yeah guys, you're checking 100% of times, but you're only changing in 2% of times, and these are the types of things that you're changing. If we can do that, we can accelerate those time, that sort of deadline around benefit delivery. But we have to create efficiencies. Customers need us more, not less.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean in person. It might mean through digital channels, but we've got a cost of living crisis. We're about to face into another budget that's going to bring more difficulty, no doubt, for our customers and for our colleagues. So having mechanisms to free up time so that we can spend more time with customers when they need them is critical. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
If we take a step back, so that's kind of post-implementation. James, you laughed before when you said basically just setting up the AI and letting it loose. How much work goes into actually setting up the guardrails, setting up because Money Plus, for example, they've got a specific way they speak. You've got, like you say, your knowledge base. How much time do you need to spend in that phase before you'd be happy to let the AI loose? Almost?
A week.
Yeah.
No, I think there's a lot of time and effort goes into that process, and it's an iterative process, and you need to find a robust way of being able to kind of test that before you let it loose with real customers, right? Or at least if you do get to a point where you need to then test with live customers, do it in a controlled way to mitigate any risk in that sense. So you do need to put a lot of time and attention into that specific part of the process to make sure it is robust, to make sure you have thought about everything, make sure you've got a wide range of stakeholders involved in that process so that everyone's opinion can be heard and at least acknowledged, even if you don't take everything on board. And then, yes, when you come to the point of deployment, understanding how you can then best test that. Can we do anything with historical data, for example? Can we run through previous conversations to see what outcome we get, and has the AI given us the outcome that we'd expect, or the best outcome for that particular interaction before then we go live to real customers. And then that might be a phased process as well. So you might start with a very specific customer journey on a very specific customer telephone line, for example, and you might throttle the traffic to a very low percentage just to kind of make sure that you're comfortable and the business is comfortable with the outcomes that you're getting, and then slowly ramp it up.
Yeah, that ability to test.
Yes.
Is super important.
Does that, is there an issue around legacy systems then? So it's like you say about if it maybe overwhelmed a particular system, how does it work if, say, your tech stack's not necessarily like fully up to date? Is there challenges around that, or can it integrate quite well with legacy systems?
I mean, there are potential issues, but hopefully you've identified those up front. Of course, there will be those challenges which when you start to integrate, you realise it's maybe not giving you the level of integration. You haven't got access to the specific data you were hoping to get access to, and that can present further challenges. But that's more part of an upfront evaluation, I think, that needs to be done. So what is your tech stack? If it's, if you're using familiar technology platforms like a Salesforce, most people will be quite comfortable these days with what information you can put in and out of Salesforce, and therefore can be quite confident in what level of automation you can get from that. For more, should we say, niche systems, or even bespoke systems, or systems which have been bespoke over time, they're always a favourite. You might need to do a little bit more testing to understand if the information you need to get out of it is feasible, and how dynamic that's going to be. So can it be real time, or does it need to be batched overnight or something like that? So there are challenges around various different tech stacks and individual systems, definitely, yeah.
Got you.
One thing you need to be cognizant of, that I've seen anyway, and other businesses as they go through this, the beginnings of the journey, is what is current and completely new of today can be not old, because it still works, but there'll be a new version powered by a more dynamic specialist LLM, for example, or a new version of technology, or a new development in a solution that comes from roadmap items that will be delivered shortly after deployment or in the mid to near term future. Have you built out sort of longer term review stages into the tech deployment to say, right, we're 6 months down the line, everything's working, but we want to see whether or not NICE or FourNet has got anything in their toolkit which could potentially enhance the existing solution that we have, or is in fact brand new that might address use cases that we haven't considered. How's that been built into the sort of planning and the forward thinking?
So it's a good question. Has it been built in? Perhaps not rigidly. So I think we're an outward-looking organisation anyway. So each member of the executive committee are very, we've all got our own little relationship with technology, and we get excited about different things. I get particularly excited about the potential in AI, for example. But equally, we're not the biggest business, and we have to make the best possible decisions we can now. Because coming back to that point about being able to always deliver value to our customers, we've got to have a keen eye on costs as well.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to. There's a trade-off there. We have to accept that the technology that we're deploying is the right one in the at least the medium term. But would we be open to conversations about how they can be enhanced and improved over time? Absolutely. But that's why I think we've chosen technology partners who do iterate and improve in the hope and with some trust that they will continue to do that, and will continue to be at or close to the cutting edge of the technology that we've deployed.
Yeah, because you want to be future-proofed, right? So
Absolutely.
something new comes along that can fit in quite nicely and help augment and develop either a new way of thinking or enhancing a customer journey. At least have the option to be able to review it.
Yeah.
I think there's a good point in there as well. And James, you've mentioned this before around expectations of AI, where, like Andrew, you said before about some LLMs are better at different tasks to others. But a lot of the perception is AI is going to be 100% right 100% of the time. Whereas, what's the way you describe it in terms of AI is not 100% of the time, but it's always available?
Yeah, so I mean, we see this with every technology hype in that my favourite has always been speech analytics when that first came on the scene, and everyone thought it's a crystal ball and it's going to tell me stuff I don't know. No, it's not going to do that. You have to know what you're looking for, tell it what you want to find, and it will tell you if it's there. It's not going to be able to tell you things that you don't know. And it's kind of a similar thing with AI now, where, like you're saying, if we don't have a very specific objective to achieve, it's not going to do that because it doesn't know what you want. You have to be able to articulate that very, very clearly. And it's never going to be 100% perfect. The idea that we want it to be is, or if I could present to you, if you tell me who is your not your best agent, but who's the next one down, if I can get the AI to be that person, but I can scale it infinitely, you take that, right? So it might not be your very best agent, but who's number 2 or number 3 on the list? If I could get the AI to that level, would you take that? If I could scale it infinitely, so if all your agents could be to that level.
My agents are going to watch this.
More of a hypothetical,
I guess
general question.
Hypothetically, let's switch it away from agents, because we've talked a bit today about the importance of that human in the loop. But if you could give me something consistently 100% of the time, I would be interested in something like that.
Yeah. And I think that's where we need to get expectations to understand that. That it's never going to be 100% of everything that you want all of the time, but it's going to be close.
There's an area which is and a discussion that's happening at the moment, which I find absolutely fascinating, in the deployment of agentic powered bots. Yeah, so agentic AI, it's able to more or less run itself within the guidelines and the parameters that you set it. You do this, do that, you set it tasks, and you give it permissions. And off it goes, and it does things, and it comes back and responds, either voice or text. What's funny in a way is because it's got access to the systems that you've had access to, but the speed with which it can respond. The biggest challenge that businesses have had when they're starting to think about going on a more agentic journey is how do I slow it down? Because I'm putting it in front of a person, it's gathering information, it's responding to it, but it's doing it at such a pace that they don't believe it's done it.
Yeah.
Because it is so quick.
Yeah.
So you've talked about journeys and crafting journeys, and we have to talk to businesses in terms of, don't ask what it can do. The question should be, how do you want it to do what it does? What image do you want it to portray? What branding and tone, etc. But do you want it to pause at this particular point in time? Because if it brings back an answer within a fraction of the time that an agent would be able to pull that information up, a human agent would be able to pull that information up and present it back, customers aren't going to trust it.
No.
How did you come up with an answer so quick? So you've used the word throttle. You've got to slow it down.
Yeah.
To make it friendly to people. And that's a very different thought process to what journey do I design? It's like, what experience do I want to design?
Yeah.
And that can be quite exciting because you're almost not constrained. Like, does the tech allow us to do? Because you've done the due diligence? Yeah, I can integrate with this legacy platform. We've got the ability to connect via API. We've tested that, that works, great. Okay, the information's there. We know the tech can do X, Y, Z. So what experience do we want to craft to give back to our customers? And you mentioned in the previous podcast, meeting customers when they're the most vulnerable at night. Now, we think hypothetically around this, just blue sky thinking, I've got my ability to talk to my Money Plus help bot. So what tone do you want it to give? How fast do you want it to respond? What type of levels of empathy do you want it to respond to?
Yeah.
Because you can tell it all of those parameters.
Yeah.
So it can be soothing. What background noise do you want it to make? I was dealing with a client who said they wanted their bot to laugh, and I thought, that's awful. I don't want to be laughed at by a bot, But they said no, we need it to be able to laugh. And then the problem you've got is culturally, how do you say what's acceptable for one humour over another?
Yeah.
It's all about the experience, and it's a completely different conversation to have than the technical capability conversation, the design steps conversation.
It's those kind of that making that human connection artificially. So going back to the chat example. So like you say, if you ask a question of a chatbot and it comes out with an instantaneous response, there's almost you haven't really thought about that. It's like, well, it doesn't need to think because it doesn't technically go through a thinking process, but you could delay it by a split second and you could have a little thing that says AI's thinking or AI's research, and it looks like, it's gone away to find that information and brought it back. I trust that answer a bit more now,
We deliberately build friction into online journeys. That's a common thing, because otherwise customers would think, oh my God, this can't be trusted. It's going too fast. So that's a thing that I think existed before AI, but I do think it opens up a really interesting way, especially when it's interfacing with the customer. So you're right, we want to meet customers where they need us.
Yeah.
And if that's in the middle of the night, that's in the middle of the night. What we give them in the middle of the night though is different. We can't say that we're going to use AI to start just completely fulfilling every request that a customer does. So you're right, but you should start from the experience and what process is that customer going through, and what are we and are we not willing to do with them using AI as well.
Yeah, and we've touched on this around the guardrails and the processes you allow it to have, and you've mentioned testing. You have to really probe out. So I've built this part of the journey up. Now I'm going to hammer the AI to see whether or not I can break it, make it do something I don't want it to do. And there's no hard and fast rule about how you set those parameters, because things can be quite fluid. And I've seen many times with our developers who are building stuff out that there isn't a textbook response as to what you're supposed to tell an AI not to do. You can tell it not to do something in a certain way, but then you have to slightly rephrase it, because when you go and test it, it says, right, I want you to do this. It says, no, I'm not going to. I really want you to do it. Oh, go on then, I'll do it. And then you have to come back and you have to tell it, no. You ground it in its persona and its task, and then once you're happy with the results, move on. And what we do find is it gets back a little bit to what we discussed earlier around identifying skill sets within a business. some of the outlooks and the skill set needed to make this technology work isn't legacy skill. It's a relatively new skill.
Yeah.
So the journey for a business is, for me, exciting to see if the skill exists, or within FourNet, what support can they bring in to help skill you up so that you can master your own domain as well. So yeah, it's exciting.
It is exciting.
How much can it, on your point there, the AI actually learn from itself? So once you've set it loose and you've got the knowledge base and you're happy with the guardrails, if it's got a really positive result from one customer, is that something baked into it that it can keep adapting, or is that up to you really if you allow it to do so?
That's a really interesting question. So fully, and there are people who, a little bit of knowledge is a very dangerous thing, but fully agentic process will find ways of doing things which you haven't considered, because it's got infinite options available to it.
Mm-hmm.
So a fully agentic bot could potentially find a way of doing something that you haven't considered necessarily possible. So the idea of getting to resolution, for example, it could find a different pathway, a different route. Is it able to learn and adopt that strategy? Effectively, yes. Because it'll do the same thing again because it knows that it's the quickest way to get it. Is that make it self-learning? I genuinely couldn't say, because that's almost like saying it's sentient. And that's a different podcast. Yeah, we're not there yet, but you've got the ability, and it is the rules that you put around, or the guardrails that you put around that agentic experience to say what you want it to do. Make it very clearly defined in its task. This is what you're doing. This is what you're allowed to do. This is what I want you to achieve. Yep. And this is what success looks like. Go. Now, the next step from that is how do you measure it? So you've mentioned, for example, well, we've got these bot conversations. I want to be able to measure them for quality. Is it doing what I want it to do? Because it's performing a pseudo-human task. Can I analyze that? Can I learn from that? Yeah. Is it doing something? It's now replicating my second best agent. Well, if my second best agent's good enough, how do I then take that template and say to my training people, actually, this is a really good way of doing something, because I can see, look at the positive results. We've got a business that, and this blows me away every time I think about it, who have achieved better CSAT results from their bot experience than they have from their human. And you think, that's counterintuitive. Why would a person... Well, but it's quicker, it's more effective, and it gets resolution. So people are getting what they want. I mean, that's a different business. It's a bit more transactional.
I think it also depends what the customer wants in that scenario. So I don't expect to ever see clear delineation between my customers prefer to speak to humans or prefer to deal with us digitally. Where I do expect to see it is, if you go back 20 years to when we first got our banking apps, it might have not been quite that long. But when we were resisting them, we were going to the cash machine, we weren't going to use these apps. I would never dream of going into the bank today to check my balance or to transfer money. You do it all on your app. But I worked in the bank at that time, and I can remember lots of customers telling, don't you worry, we won't be using this app, we don't trust this. But here we all are now, just confidently letting our data exist in our mobile phones, that such sensitive and personal information. What I do expect from the Money Plus customers is that there will be some things where they will always, not every customer every time, but there will some things where people will lean towards wanting human interaction, human intervention, and then there will be some things that is actually probably just a chore ringing up. If I could just do that myself, it would be quicker and easier. I was going to say, like on that use case, I don't know what the company is, but if it's, say, you've missed a parcel or something like that and you want to set up a redelivery date, there's a really clear start and end to that. Yeah. So if it's fast and easy, then happy days, you're going to be really pleased. But for the Money Plus example, you might just want someone to explain something a bit with a bit of empathy. Yeah. So it really does depend on the use case, I suppose, to that point. Yeah.
If we were to put like a general measure on it then, so at Money Plus, in terms of, it sounds like you're towards the start of your AI journey in the contact centre. As a industry, how developed would you say that is, in terms of people utilising AI to its fullest? James? Do you want
To its
pick that
fullest? We're nowhere near. I mean, in many respects, we're still at the beginning of understanding the AI journey. I think, the LLMs have only been around for a couple of years, really, and we're only really scratching the surface of capability and use cases that we're still trying to develop the ones that are obvious, but also come up with new ones that it can be applied to. We're still very, very early on ourselves, so the answer to that question is we're nowhere near.
No. I think, going back to your point before about the AI might do something in a new way that you've never even considered, that could be a use case. So there's probably more going to come out through that as well, just through happy accident almost.
I know, one thing I know for certainty is my world will look very different 18 months from now than it does today. And it's like when you look back at what would the future look like, 1950s programs about the future in 2022. We'll have flying cars, there'll be the robot. I have a robot cleaning my kitchen floor. I do. It doesn't look anything like the robot they put out there in the 1950s, but it's got radar.
Yeah.
And it does a brilliant job.
I still don't have a hoverboard, which is really disappointing.
I haven't got a hoverboard yet.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't know what my line of business that I operate in will look like. I've got some ideas what I think I want, but I'm not going to prejudge development, because one thing that's really exciting is from a professional perspective, that AI or LLMs and generative AI and the tools that are available to us as people within our working world has allowed me to free up some time to be more creative, because I can get ChatGPT to do some stuff for me that just removes that load from my daily life. Just to put that into perspective, some of the stuff that I do is I will create and load calls to push into our platform so I can really customize demos. I'm going to demo to a customer. I need content which is very particular to them, rather than just generic. That would have taken a significant amount of time for me to do. I can now ask my ChatGPT to create a JSON file based on here's a scenario. I want the call to be this long. I want this type of, I want sentiment, I want empathy, I want and I want that outcome, go. It goes, boom, 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 gives it to me, I'll pop it in, generates a call, and away it goes. That's an hour's worth of work that I can do in 5 minutes, which is brilliant. It supplements my workflow easily. I don't know what else I'm going to be able to
do with it.
Not yet.
Every day you find something else that it can be helpful for.
Yeah.
But I do think even like on a personal level, there's got to be a little bit of caution exercised. I've had some questionable results from ChatGPT.
Oh yeah.
So
definitely.
making sure, if I'm asking it to tell me something, that it's looking at reputable sources, that it's bringing back the right reputable information with quotes and quote citations that I can get there and read it myself. But it is, the possibility with it is just immense, isn't it?
And different LLMs are good at different things.
Yeah.
They are. So ChatGPT, for me, to create this fake call transcript, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Claude will do something else particularly well.
Yeah.
And I think we're developing a landscape, not only from a technology CCAS perspective, different LLMs for different things, but within my personal life, different AI functions to support me with different AI things. One thing that I've noticed I've got 2 teenage boys, 17-year-olds, they rely very heavily on tech. They haven't got the faintest idea how it works. They don't. They've grown up with, push a button and away it works. I come from a generation where I transitioned from analog to digital. Your things used to turn and was mechanical, or more mechanically based. So I have a more inquisitive mind about, how does it get to where it does? My kids haven't got a clue. They don't care. And there's almost an over-reliance on technology that we have, where, to your point that you've raised many times, is human in the loop. Got to keep a human in the loop. And
keep them skilled.
Keep them skilled. Yeah. And one of the fears that I have is you get slightly to the area where everything is so black box that with LLMs, for example, if you ask an LLM to give you sentiment Right, could you tell me what the sentiment is on this transcript? It'll give you sentiment. Ask it how it's calculated it. It'll give you a different view as to how it got to that conclusion today as it did tomorrow.
Yeah.
So there are certain restraints that you have around the internal processes and workings of this tech, which we need to be hyper clear about, accepting that we don't know yet. So there are areas that you don't want to let it loose because you need consistency, consumable output, which is clearly defined. And if you can't get to that conclusion quickly and easily, you have to be a tiny bit cautious. So yeah.
I think one really interesting point that's been come out of this session is basically we talk, and one of the questions was, how do you know if a company's ready for AI? And as we look into where AI is going to, what the use cases are going to be in the future, I think a good consideration that was mentioned before is the customer ready for it?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing that isn't really considered a lot of the time. Like going back to the bank reference before, they weren't necessarily ready then, but in 10 years' time, so it might be led a lot by the customer as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
True. Other use cases that I keep on thinking about, and I'd really like to meet my customers where they are, where they're feeling more vulnerable at night. And then, of course, clearly defining the role and the use and what you want AI to be able to do to support that is absolutely key. I was talking to an insurer very recently who is considering the use of an agentic bot. So they're thinking, okay, well, I'll do co-browsing with my agents. You know, hello, I have a customer who's trying to complete a journey. So we'll co-browse, you know, contact center. And then we're like, well, that means I can only do that during operational hours. But we've noticed most of our customers who potentially get stuck on this journey on their iPads do it when we're closed. And so I said, well, why don't you just deploy a helpful voice bot that can walk them through it? And they said, well, do you think customers will react well to it? And I said, well, look at the work they did in Japan with elderly people, for example, where they deployed care bots. And you know, they had a nice voice, etc. And the response was phenomenal. So we have to be careful not to prejudge customers' receptiveness to a solution if it's actually providing a really useful outcome.
No, but we have to include them in the design, and we have to have them in the feedback loop constantly, especially in my industry.